Welcome to NeLI Pod, the official podcast of the National eDiscovery Leadership Institute. Here, we bridge the gap between technology and the law, bringing you the forefront of electronic discovery. Hi, I'm Daniel Gold, your co-host and navigator through the evolving landscape of eDiscovery. With over 20 years at the junction of law and technology, I'm excited to help bring together leading experts and practitioners who provide a wealth of knowledge on electronically stored information.
And my name is Brandon Mack. I'm the co-host of our podcast. And with 2 decades of eDiscovery experience myself, I'm also thrilled to be able to participate in bringing you information and education around the world of eDiscovery.
NeLI is not just about discussions. It's about education and it's about collaboration.
Our guests, from judges to eDiscovery professionals, share insights that cater to all experience levels.
Whether you're looking for a broad overview or in-depth technical analysis, this podcast is your gateway to understanding and implementing effective eDiscovery practices.
It's important to note that while we engage with some of the brightest minds in the field, the opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the individual guests and the host, and do not necessarily represent the views of their respective employers.
We're here because of our passion for eDiscovery and our commitment to providing free, accessible educational content to legal professionals everywhere.
With that said, joining us today is Robin Perkins, who is a partner at QTAC Rock, the founder of NeLI, and is here to talk to us a bit about her eDiscovery experience. And while we could talk about all of her accolades and her experience, we will let Robin dive in and tell us a bit about yourself and your experience with eDiscovery.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here and to be doing this podcast with you. The National eDiscovery Leadership Institute, that we call NeLI, is something that I started about 10 years ago. I went to an eDiscovery conference in Boston, and Judge Shira Shinlin, back when she was on the bench and was a little bit terrifying to me, was one of the speakers, along with some other judges. And it was really well done. And I learned a lot. And I thought, well, if they can do this, why can't we do this in Kansas City? And so I just had a lot of contacts. I've been practicing law since 2001. And about 2 years after I started practicing law, I was put on a big case with a bunch of multi-district litigations and class actions, and DOJ was involved. And I was a very new associate and got thrown into handling all of the discovery. And so I had to learn. I learned by the seat of my pants, and I just had a passion for it. And I've been practicing in eDiscovery now for almost 20 years. So I know a lot of people. And I thought, well, if they can do this in Boston, why can't we do this in Kansas City? And I just picked up the phone and started calling folks. And Judge Shinlin was one that I actually called. And it just so happened her best friend lived in Kansas City because she just doesn't go to any conference. And she agreed to come. And from there, NeLI started. Retired Judge Peck, Andrew Peck from Southern District of New York, has been at every single NeLI conference since its creation. And we've just grew. But one of the things we love to do is to provide really great content for the attorneys. We have vendor sponsors, but it's not a technology conference. It's really geared towards attorneys. And we strive to get the very best speakers that are entertaining, engaging, and provide cutting edge discussions on what's going on in the legal space regarding eDiscovery.
Robin, I want to go back to you saying that I was at this conference in Boston and I just thought, well, if they could do it, I could do it. That's not something that everybody thinks about. It's not something that everyone just says, I'm going to do this. What was the real impetus? What was the spark? What was that big driver for you?
Maybe I'm just weird. I like making connections. I enjoy networking. I'm of the belief that everybody is good until you prove me otherwise. I'm a very trusting person, and I see the good in both sides. I see the good in judges, plaintiffs' lawyers, defense lawyers, government lawyers. And I really enjoy getting to know people, what drives people, and working together and collaborating. And I thought there's nothing like this in the Midwest. But I didn't want to limit it to the Midwest. I wanted to make it national. My main goal was, how do we further this area of law? How do we advance it? Similar to Sedona, I'm very actively involved in the Sedona conference. I'm involved in EDRM. I teach eDiscovery at the law school. I have my hands in a lot of different pots, so I get to know a lot of people, and there's so many great people in this space. maybe more so than any other area of law, I have found that there's a real genuine desire to educate. Technology is constantly changing. I learn something new almost every single day, and I do this for a living. This is my bread and butter. This is really my I'm still a commercial litigator. I occasionally will try cases, but my main thing is heading up the eDiscovery practice group at QTech Rock, and I'm still learning. So for those that aren't doing this day in and day out, there's just no way. You don't know what you don't know. Now, the eDiscovery attorneys, there's a handful of us now. I have found really, for the most part, have a passion and desire to educate and to help others learn this space. Because we're all learning. We're all learning every single day because it's just with the world of technology, everything's changing daily, it seems.
Well, Robin, you have the benefit of seeing this from multiple different angles. You're a practicing attorney, you're an educator, you're a founder of a conference like we're talking about here with NeLI. What do you think is the biggest challenge for educating others who aren't as steeped in e-discovery about that changing landscape that we see?
So the biggest challenge is those who think they know it all. Typically the older partners, sometimes even the younger ones who think they were raised, understanding technology and that they don't need to engage an e-discovery professional. Because again, I can't say it enough. You don't know what you don't know. You might think you know until somebody raises, a situation and you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. But sometimes it's too late. Sometimes they've already agreed to an ESI protocol, which is very burdensome for them to comply with. Maybe they need to produce a legal hold notice that they sent out from their legal department. So now there's the issue of waiving privilege to that because they were just taught, that it always comes from the legal department. And now what do? You want to produce it to show that you didn't, or that you took reasonable steps to preserve data. Modern attachments, the links and documents, folks don't always think about the challenges when hashing out ESI protocols. Redaction. Here's a big one that people don't talk about enough is you're working on an ESI protocol. Well, can you redact information that might be sensitive that's in a responsive document? Typically you don't negotiate that type of language in an ESI protocol. And so you're not able to redact information that, unless it's privileged, you're not able to redact for relevancy in a responsive document. What about withholding responsive attachments? Can you do it? Should you do it? Do you want to do it? Is it too much work to have to do it? Do you have to put it on a log if you are doing it? Just thinking through all of those things. But I found both at my current firm and former firms that everyone thinks they've handled discovery since the beginning of time, back when it was paper. And so what's the big deal? It's still just discovery. And while that's true, it is still discovery. Dealing with electronic data is so nuanced, and there's so much more that goes into it than just dealing with paper.
A lot of these topics that you're talking about, these are things that have actually been addressed before at previous conferences. I've been to them, and so I've heard this. One of the things that I find interesting is that your comment that, well, I've just been doing discovery since it was discovery, right? But it's not, right? A lot of these nuances. This is part of our obligation as lawyers, right? So Brandon being a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, you're a lawyer, right? This is our obligation. Brandon and I act in the capacity as a non-lawyer, but yet you're still ethically bound to make sure that we are doing the right thing. And that comes from the rules of professional responsibility. Rule 1, comment 8 says that you would need to be competent and understand the relevant risks and benefits of technology. Under Rule 5.3b, you have to make sure that non-lawyers are doing what they should be doing under the laws and all the regulations, all the appropriate statutes. That's not an easy thing, I think, for an attorney who's been practicing for 25, 30 years. He used to just call it discovery and we're just going to exchange a bunch of paper. How does the NeLI conference really kind of bring that home to help educate others, right? In the spirit of education, educate others to raise that level of competency?
So I'm glad you asked. And before I answer that question, let me just say that you don't have to be an expert in electronic discovery, but you have to align yourself with someone who is to meet your ethical obligations and under the professional rules. I don't expect, and nor do I think judges would expect, every single person in a firm to know as much as you and I do who deal in e-discovery every single day. But the key is realizing your limitations. You might be the very best antitrust lawyer and the very best trial attorney. That is your lane. It's fine to stay in your lane, but you need to engage someone whose lane is e-discovery and who understands e-discovery and can help guide you through that process. So you need to know enough to know you don't know certain things and that you need to align yourself with the appropriate eDiscovery experts. Regarding NeLI, so I have attended many, many, many conferences. And what I would do is I would pick and choose the things that I liked the best from each conference, all the way down to the seating arrangements, to what snacks they would give during the break. Literally everything you can think of. What food did they serve for lunch? Did they provide dinner? What kind of cocktails are they serving? What got my attention as far as the content? I am not one who likes to just sit for an entire day and listen to a panel after a panel after a panel. They can be the very best speakers. They could have great content, but it's a long day and I start to get tired or bored. Let's just say what it is. We all get a little bored of these, but we're there because we need CLE credit or it looks good or we can network. So I thought, how can I make this conference more engaging? And I enlisted a committee. I've got a committee of really well-respected eDiscovery attorneys on my committee that help me with this, but we do mock hearings. We have judges rule in the court, the jurisdiction of NeLI. We don't know what each other is going to say. We know some basic facts. I don't know what argument my opposing counsel is going to make. He doesn't know what argument I'm going to make. We don't know how the judge is going to rule. It's as real life as you can possibly get. We have mock negotiations. We'll have a plaintiff's lawyer and a defense lawyer negotiate an ESI protocol or negotiate a privilege log or negotiate TAR validation. We mix it up every year because we don't repeat the same stuff every single year, but we try to keep it super entertaining, super engaging. I stole a little bit from TED Talk. Don't you guys tell on me, but we call it NeLI Talk. It's 20 minutes, not 15 minutes. And it's a 20-minute session. We have a few of them sprinkled out. That's where we sometimes will bring in the technology aspect. A lot of our vendor sponsors will talk about things not sales pitchy. Again, this is geared for attorneys, but things like forensic collection. What can you get, when you forensically collect a mobile device? Can you tell where somebody was when they posted that photo? Kind of the behind the scenes stuff, really entertaining. We might talk about technology-assisted review briefly, not long enough to, make anyone want to poke their eyes out, but enough to get them excited about it. Document review, it's just really fun, cutting-edge topics, short, just tidbits, 20 minutes long, and it's been very well received. In addition to our role playing, and we have a couple panels, sometimes still an in-house counsel panel that everyone loves, a judges panel. So here's an example. We did this last year. We're going to do it again this year, September 19th and 20th. Let's remind everyone at the end of this again. September 19th and 20th is the NeLI conference for 2024. We have a judges panel each day. One of the days, the judges are role playing and doing mock hearings. We make the judges do the work. We give them a topic and one judge will argue one side. For example, last year was redactions. Can we redact within a responsive document? Can you withhold non-responsive documents if it's part of a family that has a member that's responsive? I had one judge argue one side and another judge argue the other side, and the audience gets to choose the winner. So, and then the next day we had a case law update with the judicial panel. Again, wildly popular, fun, entertaining, will not put you to sleep. Let me just give a little plug here, if you don't mind. Please attend NeLI. September 19th and 20th. It's a 2-day conference. If you're traveling, we end early enough in the afternoon that regardless of which coast you might live on, you're able to fly home if you want, or you can stay an extra night and enjoy Kansas City. We provide all of your meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, cocktails, great snacks, and it's free. In-person attendance is free. And we get CLE, wherever you need CLE. It doesn't matter which jurisdiction. When you when you register at eDiscoveryleadership.org, there's a place where you can indicate which states you need CLE for, and we will apply for CLE on your behalf.
Fantastic sales
I don't know
pitch.
if I answered your question, but I don't even remember your question now. But
There was a lot of answer there, but a fantastic sales pitch for the conference itself. And it sounds like the presentation and the engagement that you have at NeLI is what really separates it from other conferences that are out there. And I think we all understand that the conference world in eDiscovery kind of has a glut of conferences that are out there. but they're all very different and they sound very different from the way in which NeLI presents information. But I do want to talk about the specific information. When you think forward to this year, next year, what do you think are the most cutting edge areas of eDiscovery that you feel are going to be the most important and the most engaging to practitioners who might attend at this year's conference?
If I understand your question, and I just so the audience knows, I've not seen these questions, so listen, shooting from the hip. Mobile devices tend to give me the biggest headache. It seems like Apple is constantly changing the way that someone can even collect data from an Apple device. Android's same thing. There's things that we haven't even thought of. Who would have ever thought, even just 4 or 5 years ago that you could read a text message or take a phone call from a watch? There's so much that I don't even know. Again, the unknown. We don't know what we don't know. So I don't know that I have a great answer for that because there's technology, AI. AI is a big thing right now. How do we implement AI with document review? It's a whole new thing, different than continuous active learning or technology assisted review. We're starting to see AI summarizing documents, and how do we utilize that so that we can get through documents quicker, more cost effective, and more efficiently, but also more accurately than traditional document review. Again, Brandon, I wish I knew the answer to that, but I've got to think AI and issues with mobile devices, modern links, and modern attachments with links within documents still give me issues. Collaboration tools are another kind of sticking point that we're all still trying to figure out because a lot of developers, even on construction cases, they'll start using these collaboration tools. And well, who's the custodian? Who is the custodian and how are they being preserved? And are they being preserved? Ephemeral messaging is still, a sticky situation with the disappearing messages. I'll get on my soapbox a little bit, but I don't think because somebody uses ephemeral messaging, that's necessarily a bad thing. Everyone looks at it as, well, they're doing something nefarious. I disagree with that. There's lots of reasons that one may want to, legitimate reasons why one may want to communicate with ephemeral messaging. For those that don't know what that means, it's disappearing messages, similar to Snapchat. With data security continuing to be such an issue and a hot topic, if you don't have the data, it can't be breached. So companies may want to move towards that type of messaging platform. It's not much different than a telephone call, I would argue. But yet folks look at this as spoliation if you're communicating that way. So I'm glad you gave the disclaimer at the beginning that this is just my opinion. It's not necessarily the opinion of QTech Rock or, other members on my committee at NeLI, but I foresee that there's going to be additional opinions and the law will evolve and develop in that regard.
And one of those happens to be In-Ray Uber Technologies just decided April 23rd and talking about modern attachments. And I think that is something for sure that is going to come up. I'm sure it's going to come up. I'd love to see the judges argue. The judge's opinion in that particular case, I thought was great. Finally finding some sort of reasonableness around modern attachments. I encourage people to go ahead and take a look at that case. And so I think you're right. I think between generative AI, ephemeral messaging, modern attachments, these are all the things that people want to hear. And I'm going to have a vote for having the judges spar it out at NeLI. I'm curious, Robin, when you have people talk about this is the NeLI conference, this is where I'm going, and somebody says, what is the NeLI conference? What are the few words that you want people to say? This is the NeLI conference. This is what it's about. It's more than just, hey, I picked up the phone and I all of a sudden created this conference. You want somebody to say, this is the brand of NeLI. Is it education? Is it, this is the most informative eDiscovery conference that's out there. Besides all the good food and the free drinks, what is it that you want people to walk away with saying?
Great question. My main goal is when they leave, they have practical tips and advice that they can implement immediately. That it's not just a theory type session. It's not so high level that it's not really practical. I want them to leave the conference and immediately be able to use what they learned in the tools in their practice the very next day. I also want them to have a fun time. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be enjoyable, because if it's not, people get bored and they don't want to come back. I want it to be considered as a very high quality conference that we take very, very seriously. Every of us. So we encourage everyone to complete an evaluation of the speakers, of the content, of the food, everything, the room, all of it. And We have some limitations with what we can do, but if we can change something to make it better, we do that. And we're always looking for ways to improve. We will never stop growing, learning, trying to improve it. Here's another example. How do we get everybody back in their seats? So we record it. So NeLI is offered in person, free, well worth it. I think we had people from 15 different states travel to attend NeLI in person that weren't just speakers, like actual audience members. Well worth it to attend in person. We also, if you can't travel to Kansas City and you still want to attend, we also offer it remotely, live video stream that day. You can ask questions online. You can type it out, and at the end of each session, if time permits, sometimes the sessions run long, we don't have time for questions, but if we do, we look and see what questions that come in from our remote attendees as well. I don't know many conferences that do that. We also record each session. So if somebody wants to get CLE credit and they only need an hour or so and they're interested in the judges panel, they can download and listen to just that session. I'm lost now because I didn't remember what your question was exactly. But
The mission.
the mission. Yes, the mission.
So people are going to walk away with actionable steps that they can implement
yes.
the very next day. And I think that kind of tagline, I think, is authentic to its core, because a lot of conferences, and all three of us have been to many conferences over the years, a lot of it is either very vendor heavy, it is very party heavy, and there's not enough emphasis on what can I walk away with the very next day. And I think that right there is your tag, right? I think that's interesting. I think it goes to the reason why you picked up the phones to begin with, to start making phone calls to get a conference here in Kansas City.
I think it's also why you got good responses when you picked up the phones, because that mission of really bringing practical education and things that people can take home and really use in their practice is a bit different from a lot of the other conferences that are out there. It's also pretty lofty of a goal, and it seems to take a lot of effort to put together a conference like that. It's not something that someone does all on their own. So can you tell us a bit more about who else is on your team? Who else is on the board? What comprises the team that drives NeLI?
The first call I made was to UMKC, because we reimburse judges for their travel expense. We'll reimburse in-house counsel for travel expense and government attorneys. Judges cannot be reimbursed from my law firm, QTech Rock. So we had to find a good partner that could help. And I have a full-time practice. I'm still a practicing attorney. So I can't handle all the logistics of everything. I help get speakers and content, but UMKC has been a great partner. They handle the room, the website, the financial aspect of it. They handle all the money. They make sure all the speakers are paid. We have a speakers and sponsors dinner the evening before the conference. We have a dinner for everyone. Here's another thing I know conferences don't do, except NeLI, is for every single in-person attendee at the end of the first day, we provide dinner. Come have cocktails. I met you, Brandon, at last year's cocktail reception, and then sit down and have dinner with us. Again, no charge to the attendees. So UMKC handles all of that. As far as a committee to help me, we've got, like I mentioned, Ed Rippey is with Covington Burling. He's Chambers rated eDiscovery lawyer. We have Leah Bays, who is a well-known plaintiff's attorney and handles eDiscovery. We've got Tessa Jacobs. She's at Hush Blackwell. We have John Pappas, who brings knowledge from the vendor side of things. He's been at different eDiscovery service provider companies. And now we have Daniel Gold, who's just recently joined within the last month. And Daniel, you're helping with the podcast aspect, which I'm thrilled about. Somebody actually doing a podcast on NeLI and eDiscovery. And the social media, where we've lacked in some of our marketing and outreach is on these social media platforms. And you just helped me with my farm page. So you are the social media guru. So happy that you're going to start.
It's easy to celebrate something, I'll call it, when you truly believe in it, right? And I think that was the calling that I think that's why I picked up the phone. I called you and I said, hey, I've got this crazy idea. And why I reached out to Brandon as a co-host for this as well is because it's easy to celebrate something when you're passionate about it. And what is obvious here is your passion for helping with the knowledge aspect, helping with education. But I want to lighten the mood just a little bit. You're passionate about other things as well, Robin. And you mentioned just a moment ago, and I think it's worth sharing as well, another side of Robin, who's not the lawyer, who's not the educator. You are also in charge of a farmstead here. And so What is that? Like, where did that come from? Like, all of a sudden, it's eDiscovery,
Yeah.
and now you have a whole lot of little
So
animals.
I'd rather talk about the farm than eDiscovery most days. A year ago, if you asked me if I was going to have a farm, I would have said, no, you're crazy because I'm a city girl. But my husband's from North Carolina. He was raised on a horse farm. He is in the Army and retiring in less than 2 years and is kind of thinking about what's he going to do in his next life. So we bought 30 acres in Tonganoxie and we call it a farm. I'm a word person. Technically, it's a ranch because it's with animals and not crops. But Old MacDonald like screwed everybody up with the Old MacDonald song. So we call it a farm. And we have the miniature Highland cattle and high parks, and they're adorable. And we have goats. We just have baby goats. So we are out there. We're actually farming. We have 5 dogs now because we got 2 guardian livestock dogs, which are now indoor dogs. Don't even get me started on that. They're still puppies, though, and it's been raining here for the past 2 weeks, it seems like. So I couldn't leave them outdoors.
We all need a hobby. We need an outlet.
We need an outlet.
This is your outlet.
Yes, it is great therapy. And I have taken some eDiscovery calls from the barn. I'm not sure how we tie that into eDiscovery, but I'm sure there's a way somehow.
If you've read some of my older blog posts, I somehow tied together the Royals winning the World Series to eDiscovery,
Okay.
my love of coffee roasting to eDiscovery, and even Dora the Explorer at one point.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
So you should be able to work this in
I'm gonna
somehow,
work it.
Daniel
So I'm
Gold.
gonna work it. We'll make it a NeLI podcast next time. So, Robin, this has been a great inaugural episode. Obviously, the best guest to have on the inaugural episode here of NeLI Pod. For everyone listening, you mentioned it before. How do people go and find out more about NeLI?
eDiscoveryleadership.org.
Easy enough. And they go there and they could register and they could learn about all the previous conferences that you've had, the guests who have been there, the speakers who have been there, some of the previous agendas, correct?
Correct. So there is a drop down link that will show you. I don't recall how far back it goes, but certainly the last few are on there. 2014. Oh, I say 10 years. That will show you the speakers and the content, the agendas. So you will get a sense. I'm not sure if the registration link is open just yet. If not, it will be soon. Hopefully, by the time this podcast airs, it'll be available. But you can see the level of talent we bring. These are big names. These are people that everyone reads about and hears about in different court decisions, or that are, important people. Maura Grossman. I mean, she's like the mother of continuous active learning. She's been a speaker at NeLI, if not every year, pretty darn close to every single year. There's not someone that knows more about TAR than the Maura Grossman. And I just conferred with her the other day, and she's hoping to be back as a speaker for NeLI 2024 on some new ideas about how to validate TAR. Again, September 19th and 20th. You don't want to miss it. If for some reason you can't attend in person, you can always sign up to attend remotely. Another reason to be in person, though, is we give out really great swag. So in addition to the great food, guess what? We give out really cool things like backpacks and you name it, all the way from coffee mugs to barbecue sauce. It's there. And in addition to every single in-person attendee getting really cool swag, we have a drawing. So how do you get people back in their seats? I meant to say this earlier and I got sidetracked. So we record the session. So we have to have a little short break between each one. Well, human nature is you start talking, you're in the hallway, you're not rushing back to your chair once you get out of the room. Well, guess what? At NeLI, people rush back to their chairs because we ring a bell, we do a drawing, and our sponsors have contributed really nice gifts, like $150 worth of gourmet chocolates or Apple earbuds, really good, really gift certificates. And you have to be in the room to win. And we draw names out of a bucket. And so we get everybody back in the seat ready for the next session. And the swag is really, really good.
Well, good. Well, thank you. eDiscoveryleadership.org, September 19th through the 20th. Robin, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
If you've enjoyed our discussion and want to learn more, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite streaming platform. We're here to help you stay on top of the latest trends and developments in eDiscovery.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions about today's topic. Reach out to us via our social media channels or email us directly. Your feedback makes our program stronger and more attuned to the topics you care about in the world of legal technology.
Remember, all the resources and insights shared today are aimed at enhancing your practice and understanding of eDiscovery.
Join us next time on NeLI Pod as we continue to bring you expert knowledge and lively discussions. Until then, keep innovating, keep discovering, and keep pushing the boundaries of legal technology. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.